When I open my phone and scroll through interiors online, it feels like I'm flipping through an endless catalog where everyone's home looks strangely familiar. A studio in Copenhagen, a penthouse in New York, a high rise in Seoul. Look closely and they all share the same palette, the same curves, and the same boucle chairs. The distance between cultures shrinks until every city seems to be working off the same template. But that's not because design traditions suddenly converged. It's because social media algorithms have compressed them into a single flattened global aesthetic. Now, this isn't a brand new phenomenon. For years, I've been noticing that cafes and Airbnbs all across the globe had started to blur together. The same Edison bulbs, the same reclaimed wood tables, the same exposed brick. You've seen this look before 1,000 times. That's because these weren't spaces optimized for comfort. They were spaces optimized for recognition, instantly photographable and instantly shareable. But today more than ever, that cultural creep is crossing the line from public spaces into our private ones. And the aesthetic that once belonged to coffee shops and short-term rentals has now seeped into our living rooms and bedrooms. I call it the showroom effect, and it's the slow erosion of privacy where homes are designed less for the people who live in them and more for the possibility of being seen. Your armchair isn't just a place you sit, it's a future Instagram post. Your bed isn't just where you sleep, it's a backdrop for breakfast in bed flat lays. And once you start seeing your home through that lens, it's really hard to unsee it. But what's making this transition so overwhelming is the speed at which it's happening. In the past, styles took years to move from designers to magazines to department stores. Mid-century modern took decades to trickle from architect sketches to the average living room. But today, TikTok collapses that entire process into weeks, and a single viral apartment tour can trigger factories overseas to churn out replicas by the thousands. Social media doesn't just show us homes anymore, it scripts them. And an innocent ripple of images turns into a tidal wave. The arched doorway, the ribbed wood panel, the plaster wall. What begins as inspiration quickly hardens into replication. And because the same images circulate everywhere, geography barely matters anymore. Kitchens in Toronto mirror those in Tokyo, and bedrooms in Sao Paulo echo those in Stockholm. What matters isn't local culture, but whether a look performs well in the algorithm. But the algorithm doesn't just shape taste, it reshapes the marketplace itself. Because the moment a style gains traction online, factories and retailers rush to meet the demand. And so production bends around the algorithm's preferences, which means pieces that photograph well get mass produced, while subtler, quieter designs disappear before they ever reach a store. And so our sense of preference isn't just influenced by the feed, it's being drastically narrowed by it. But the most profound changes here aren't even aesthetic, they're emotional. Because it's not just that our homes look more alike, it's that we start relating to them differently. Homes used to be private reflections of personality and circumstance, but now they're treated like ongoing projects, always slightly incomplete, always waiting for the next purchase to validate them. And that endless cycle of just one more thing doesn't come from neighbors or family, it comes from the invisible pull of the feed. And with that comes a quiet form of hesitation. We tell ourselves we'll start hosting people once the kitchen is updated, once the wall is repainted, once the cushions match. But that state of completion we're searching for never arrives. And so our homes shift from being a place for living to being a set waiting for approval. And it doesn't only show up when we think about guests, it shows up when we're alone. The more we train ourselves to see flaws through the eyes of an imagined audience, the harder it is to feel at peace in our own space. The chipped table, the old couch, the wall that isn't painted yet, suddenly they don't just look unperfect, they feel like failures. Coming home should feel like relief, but instead it starts to feel like stepping into a reminder of what's missing. And that quiet frustration builds, and little by little, the home stops being a refuge and starts being another source of stress. And what all this creates isn't surveillance in the traditional sense, it's performance. Because even if you never post your space online, you move through it as if you might. You adjust a lamp here, hide the clutter there, polish small details no one will ever notice. The audience isn't real, but the performance is. You start walking into your own rooms like a critic instead of a resident, and instead of seeing comfort, you see unfinished work. And the irony is that how we actually experience comfort suggests the opposite of what the feed teaches us. We feel most at ease in homes that are lived in, with books scattered on the table, artwork collected slowly, and furniture chosen for comfort, not because it matches. And your guests won't remember your perfect paint color or your on-trend lamp. They'll remember the warmth, the conversation, and the feeling of being welcomed. And so this is why this subconscious algorithmic drive towards sameness matters. Not just because our spaces start to look repetitive, but because their differences actually get erased. Think about it. Regional craft used to be deeply tied to geography. Ceramics in Oaxaca, woven textiles in Istanbul, rattan in Bali. But today, all that gets absorbed into the same visual script. And so what once carried the weight of history and culture dissolves when it's slotted into the same algorithm-friendly vignette. But that's not all, because when everything is standardized, we lose more than just cultural specificity. We lose memory. The chipped mug from your grandmother's kitchen and the faded rug you've carried from one apartment to the next, they tell stories that no mass-produced replica ever can. I mean, homes used to act like an archive, layered with reminders of where we've been. But in chasing a flawless image, we erase those traces of life and end up with homes that photograph beautifully but feel strangely unhistorical, spaces without a past. And so resisting this looks like letting our homes breathe again, giving them time to evolve. And that means noticing how the morning light falls before deciding on a set of curtains. It means inviting people over before the chairs match, and remembering that a home doesn't need to be perfect, because the life inside it never is.